Today we're going to be talking about domain, range, and end behavior. Our objective is that we will analyze graphs to determine the domain, range, and the end behavior of a function. Now for this lesson, you're going to want multiple colors because I'm going to use a lot of color coding to help you guys see what's going on. So for domain, domain is all possible x values, and our range is all the possible y values. So basically we're looking at where these functions start and end on the x-axis and where they start and end on the y-axis. So when we're looking at domain, I'm going to mark the domain in pink, we're looking at where they stop on the left and stop on the right. So this function stops over here on the left. So I'm going to mark that off as my left edge, and then it stops here on the right. So I'm going to mark that off as my right edge. And then I'm going to think about where this is on the x-axis. This is at negative 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one is at positive 1, 2, 3. What that means is that my domain goes from negative 4 to 3. And we use brackets because it's got these closed circles on the end saying we stop at exactly that point. For our range, we're looking at where it stops on the bottom and where it stops on the top. So all my ranges are going to be in blue. So I'm looking at the y values from these. So negative 1, 2, 3, and positive 1. So our range goes from negative 3 to 1. And we always go from least to greatest. So for domain, that's from the left to the right. And for range, we start at the bottom and go to the top. So we're going to use the same idea in the second example. Domain, we're marking it where it stops on the left and where it stops on the right. And that's negative 1, 2, 3, 4, and positive 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the one thing that's different about this one is that we have an open circle this time. Because we have an open circle, we're going to use bracket negative 4 because the negative 4 had a closed circle. And then at positive 4, we're going to use a parenthesis. So brackets are for closed circles. Parentheses are for open circles. For our range, we're going to mark off the bottom here. Now we need to be careful. The top of our function this time is not this circle because that would cut off up here. We need to mark off the very top of the picture. So your top and your bottom or your left and your top and your bottom won't necessarily be an endpoint, and that's okay. So our range is negative 2 to positive 2. And our positive 2 is going to get a closed circle because what these lines mean is it's just a whole bunch of closed circles all stuck together, so it's still going to be a bracket. In our third example, we have something a little different. We have some arrows. So this time we have an arrow on the left and an arrow on the right. Our symbols that we're going to use for this are going to be negative infinity and positive infinity because we're going forever to the left, and on our x values, which is the domain, the x get more and more negative as we go left, and then positive infinity because we're going to keep getting more and more positive as we go to the right. Since infinities are not exact stopping points, they're also going to be included in the parentheses. So if you see an arrow or an infinity, think infinity. So our domain goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. Our range, when we look at the bottom, see the bottom there, and then at the top, we've got the arrows. So our bottom's at negative 3. We just said it's going to go up forever, so that's infinity. So our range would be -3 to infinity. The other thing we're going to talk about today is end behavior, and it's just like what it sounds. It wants to know how the ends behave, or what they're doing. So when you see as x goes to positive infinity, f of x goes to, this is talking about the arrow on the right, so the right-hand side arrow points blank. The bottom one, as x goes to negative infinity, x's are negative on the left, so it's the arrow on the left points blank. And we're going to be filling in the blanks. So for all my right arrows, I'm going to use pink. So I'm looking at this arrow, and this arrow, and this arrow. So the arrow on the right, this arrow is pointing down, so f of x is going to negative infinity. As x goes to positive infinity, this arrow on the right is pointing up this time, so f of x is going to positive infinity. As x goes to positive infinity, this arrow on the right is pointing up again, so it goes to positive infinity. Now let's look at the left arrows, which I'm going to do in blue. So as x goes to negative infinity, f of x is pointing down, so it's also going to negative infinity. As x goes to negative infinity, so the left, also pointing down, goes to negative infinity. And as x goes to negative infinity, f of x this time is pointing up, so it's going towards positive infinity. That's all for today. Fill in your summary and I'll see you in class.